Katrina and I'm from Fitting Connection, and thanks to Olympic Council, they've put on some COVID workshops to keep you engaged and reduce the boredom at home. So today we're going to be doing some workshops on upcycling old garments that no longer fit you or got holes, and we're going to turn those into new accessories. These are all the garments that we're going to be upcycling over the next couple of days. We've got an old sweater that is a little bit small. This t-shirt has been around for many years. He's got a few holes, so we're going to upcycle him as well. An old shirt I found in an op shop. Sorry, an old tie I found in an op shop. A shirt that isn't the right colour for me. Some other ties found in an op shop. And again, the buttons are all being upcycled as well. This is a bomber jacket that I've already taken the zip out of. It's just really long and it's starting to peel, and we're going to use that as well.
Yep.
So I had a bit of a disaster with filming and cutting. The cobalt navy blue beanie did not work, mainly with filming. So we've come back and I'm going to start again. I've got a grey jumper here that I'm going to use as a main, and I've got a skirt here that's not suited to my body shape, and it's got a couple of needle holes as well, so I'm going to use that as a lining. The first thing is to cut your headband, the band for the beanie. Now, you're going to cut the band eventually around 50 to 55 centimetres long. The width is completely determined by the elastic that you have, or potentially by the pattern that you're wanting to use. So I'm going to use this rib in the band. Now that band's quite wide, but my elastic is narrower, so I'm going to fold that up. Allow a decent amount of seam allowance. This makes the whole process a little bit easier. I'm going to cut it that wide. So that's the band width. Now cut that 50 to 55 centimetres long, depending on. Now there was a split in the jumper, so I'm just going to cut that, or allow for that to be a seam allowance. So that'll be probably a little bit longer. That's going to be, by the time I use that as seam allowance, it'll be a 50 centimetre long band. I like using a little bit of elastic in the band, particularly in knitted fabric, when there's, as you probably know, when you're wearing it, it loses its elasticity, and it doesn't come back as much. So I like to put a little bit of elastic in there, just so that this holds firm and doesn't come off your head. So again, just measure around your head so it's nice and comfortable. Allow a bit extra seam allowance. Band with my elastic. Now I've measured my head with the elastic, and 45 centimetres sits quite comfortably, and that includes a seam. Then you go add a little bit of seam allowance. So I'm going to cut it at 47. Now I have a downloadable pattern, so when you print it out and paste it all together, it's going to look like this. Now if you're making your beanie from all the same fabric, once you cut your fabric out, it would look like this, because you're going to cut it from the fold. But we're not cutting it ours on the fold, we're going to have seam allowance along here, so that when you're cutting along the top, you're just going to allow a centimetre here. Also, we're going to have a seam in the middle here, because our jumper's not wide enough. So when you're cutting it, don't forget to have a seam here and a seam along there. So lie your jumper flat. Now if you cut it, I've got a bit of a knit feature there, so I'm just going to cut above that. Don't forget you've got to allow a seam allowance on this side. Get the seam allowance. And then do the same in your lining fabric. This has got ruching up here, so I'm just going to cut that just so it doesn't interfere while I'm laying the flat fabric. Just that makes it a little bit flatter. And there's actually 3 layers to this skirt, so I might just cut the top layer off completely. One layer. Two layers. again, don't forget that seam allowance. When you're working with upcycling garments, it's never going to be 100% like you were with working with fabric. The fabric has been worn, so it's got a mind of its own a little bit. It's like it's got a bit of a memory. Been, you know, washed, stretched, loved. So it's never going to be 100% perfect. So you will need to make adjustments as you're cutting and sewing to make allowances for that. Okay, so with right sides together, we're just going to sew up each side of the main and lining. And with right sides together again, we're just going to sew up each of the top of the panels. I'm going to turn that around. I'm just going to work with the heaviest fabric underneath. Okay, so now we're going to complete the circle here. I'm going to sew the circle ends together, and then we're also going to sew up the darts, like so. So that was the end done. Now the dart's turn. Okay, so that's all sewn up now. Now it's time to attach the band. Okay, sorry, we forgot to leave a hole in one of the seams to turn the hood inside out. So choose a seam, won't matter which one, and just unpick a hole. There we go, that's the hole. The band, you'll need to join it, create a circle, right sides together. With the elastic, join the elastic, I like to create a box. It gives it a little bit, the seam, a little bit more strength. To help make it easier when joining the band to the crown, it's going to be easier to do that if you pre-join your band seams together. So just overlock those together, and that way you can avoid the stress of having to make sure all 4 layers of fabric are together evenly. Bit of an extra process, but trust me, it'll make it a lot easier. Especially if you're a beginner sewer, or you don't sew a lot. So the elastic's smaller in length, so just work the elastic around inside as you're going along. You've joined your band all together. You're going to find correct heart quarters using a pin. This will be marking where you join it together with the beanie. So you've got an even stretch all the way around your head. Now you also remember that with beanie you haven't got seams on all 4 sides, so you need to pin that as well. Do it this way. Place a pin in each quarter, or in this particular occasion actually half, indicating where your quarters are. So now you've got pins in lining and main both there, and then you'll use the seams as an indication as well, and you've got it in the band as well, seam and then the 3 pins at the other quarters. Turn it inside out. Pop your fingers through the hole that you created. Find your seam, grab your seam allowance there, and also that one. Turn it through the hole, pin them all together, so just make sure your seams are all aligned. Pin that, make sure your pin's in securely. Turn it in the other way. Turn that over. So you're creating a bit of a figure 8 in the crown of the beanie. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pin your quarters together. Now you're going to stretch the band on. So that's why you do it this way, so that you can make sure that you're getting an even stretch. And it's also why I overlocked the rib seams together, just to make it easier, so that when you're pulling, you only have to line up 3 layers instead of trying to line up 4, making sure you don't get any holes in the process. Now you can go around and pin them all together if you wish, or you can do that as you're going, completely how you like to work. I tend to do at least half. You won't be able to do it all the way around because of the figure 8, so you're best off just doing half. Okay, so then grab your seam, make sure everything's nice and flat. Grabbing your seams, pop it in the overlocker. Take your time doing this and make sure all your seam edges are meeting, and don't forget to stretch around evenly as you're going. I like to try and cut a little bit off the lining at the very least. That way I know that I've caught all 3 layers. As you're going, don't forget to move those pins out the way. You don't want to blunt your knife. Turn that inside out. Now, I haven't caught the elastic in the seam, in this joint seam, because otherwise it would get too bulky. So to help prevent the elastic from shifting and moving, you might want to do a plain stitch down here that'll hold the elastic in place, and it'll reduce the chance of the elastic rolling inside the band. The next part is closing down in here. So turn inside out. To run a gathering stitch all the way down there, making sure it's on your main side of your lining, of your crown. Okay, so just on this side. Quite a large gathering. I do it as my biggest stitch, which is 5 on my machine. You could do anywhere from 4 to 5 should be fine. And then you just want to pull that gathering stitch in as much as you can. You can pull from both sides. Once you got one side done, knot it off with the threads. If your main and lining are the same fabric and you haven't got a seam, before you stitch it all close, before you put in a circle, just run a gathering stitch down the very center so that you don't have to try and find the center later. It's a bit easier doing it that way. If your fabric is really thick and it's a bit hard to gather, you can hand stitch it. I've hand stitched it before, closed, and that still worked as well. Don't cut your threads too short here, but just trim them off a little bit. Find that hole. There's the hole. There it is. Turn in the right way. Well, I've got the plain machine out now. Stitch that elastic so it doesn't twist. Reduce my stitching. Now you can slip stitch this hole closed if you want, or you can cheat like I often do and just plain machine it. I come from a background of mass production, so for me, I do production ways rather than home sewing ways. So, and I would only use a slip stitch if it's going on the outside or it's visible. See what that's in. Trim your threads. Beanie is now complete. So this is the finished product of the beanie. As you can see, it's sitting nice and snug on my head. This is another one that I've made previously, just showing you different ways. Now I hand stitched this together because the fabric was so bulky. I just hand stitched all the top bit together rather than gather stitch it like I did on this one. So this is a neck wrap and beanie that I made a little while ago, and the reason why I've had this cardigan for many years 13-14 years. I could never part with it, even though it didn't fit me anymore. The style wasn't quite right, but I couldn't part with it because it was my outfit. It was part of my outfit that I wore as I left the reception of the venue after our wedding. So I've turned it into something that I can continue wearing today.